Everybody ready? Okay. We'll call the November 14th Select Board meeting to order. First on the agenda is some warrants. Warrant 2409, 2410, Facilities Project Warrant 28 and 29.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On warrant 2409 dated November 2nd, 2023, you'll see a payroll total of $872,033. On the bills payable side of things, just to call out a couple items in the amount of $3,809,206. You'll see on the assessor side of things, roughly $10,000 assessment for the renewal of Patriot. Patriot Properties provides supplemental services for our assessor's office for fiscal year 24 through 25. On the DPW side of things, $208,000 roughly for paving. They've been out and about a lot lately. I'm sure people have seen them around town. And then also towards the end here for Facilities Project 28, they're paired together on the same date. $325,000.42 for project design, OPM, and pre-construction payments. So we're starting to draw down some of those funds in advance of the project schedule going from the bid into the construction phase. For November 16th, 2023, warrant number 2410. On the payroll side of things, a total of $798,164. Worth pointing out on November 16th that there's still $0 for snow. So that's always nice. We'll see how long we can keep that number rolling. On the bills payable side of things, $641,303. For the DPW, there's about a $52,000 purchase for a new vehicle. It was an ATM, annual town meeting appropriation. On the fire side of things, about $52,000 to replace the SCBA equipment. That's air packs. IT, about $10,000 split between IT services and regional IT services. It's continual payments that we're making towards that initiative. And then on the facility project side of things, $278,400. Once again, specifically for project design, work performed from October 1st through October 31st, 2023. So just making sure we keep current with those. Are there any questions on either of those four?
I do not.
So I'll move to accept and approve warrants 2409, 2410, and facility projects warrant 28 and 29.
I'll second that.
I just have a question, unrelated to this vote, but do any board members feel that we would like more detail on the facilities ones, or are we good with the way it is? Whatever the majority feels. What do you guys think?
Well, now that they're starting, it's going to start ramping up.
Right.
So, I mean, it's, prior to this point, it's mostly been monthly fee and some of the smaller activities. Probably makes sense as we get more in-depth into the project, and our facilities project warrants will likely start being much bigger. Yeah. I mean, I don't need to
Maybe
know
at
every
that time.
detail, but
Yep. And I'd be happy to accommodate that. I think,
Breakdown, yeah.
yeah, what you're seeing right now predominantly is they're starting to compile the bid documents that are going to go out over the winter, so there's not a terrible amount of detail there. But as we get into the construction phase, I think what we can do when we do draw it down, they give us a breakdown showing, here are the tasks they completed, or they're, 40% through, forming out the foundations or something like that.
Gantt chart or?
Yeah. So we
Maybe
can
that-
we can
that
give a
would be
little,
helpful.
a high view progress
Yeah.
report that I think will be good for the community too, that just want to kind of follow along.
Okay. All in favor of approving these?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, passes
Good
unanimously.
idea, Jeff.
We have some minutes to approve, October 24th and November 7th. Have everybody read them?
Yes, I did.
Is there a motion?
Move to approve as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Town administrator updates and report.
Thank you. We have completed our MS4 stormwater reporting, and thank you to our conservation agent, Kristen Kent, for keeping us in compliance in that area. That was something that came down from the state several years ago, so we continue to keep up on that. MEMA has reviewed and returned our emergency management plan. Chief Lacoste will be taking us through the next steps, and he may touch on that a little bit this evening. A huge thank you to our Veterans Agent Kevin Welch and all town staff and volunteers that organized our well-attended Veterans Day ceremony. It was a pretty good turnout. And then, of course, it's worth mentioning, thank you to our veterans, always. Wreaths Across America will be held in Middleton on Saturday, December 16th at the Oakdale Cemetery at 1:30 p.m. Signs for the new Brigadoon parking policy are expected to be delivered sometime late next week or early the week after. We're still shooting for a December 1st implementation, so we'll make sure that the schools distribute notice and we send information out to the abutters. We held a meeting with the organizers of the Middleton Turkey Trot, and that race starts at 8 a.m. on Thanksgiving Day at the Flint Memorial Library. We have a lot of coordination with police, fire, DPW, so thank you to town staff that help support that. We received a draft of the Villbridge Middleton 40B corridor study, and it's currently being peer reviewed, so we anticipate to get that back sometime in the next 2 weeks, hopefully in time for the next select board meeting on the 28th, and maybe we can dig into that a little bit more publicly once it's finalized. Congratulations to Middleton's newest member of the police department, Officer Jonathan Santiago. He was appointed last Tuesday, the 7th. Also, congratulations to our new DPW working foreman, Glenn Osgood, who came up, was an internal hire, so he's climbed the ranks. Congrats to him. And thank you to the over 25 residents who attended last Thursday's Solid Waste Advisory Committee meeting. The meeting can be viewed on the town website, and feedback may be submitted to Ms. Bresnahan through Monday, November 27th. And thank you to Jackie and that committee for all the work they're doing on that topic.
Any updates from that meeting?
So the committee will be meeting for 2 more times, late November and early December, to synthesize that input session and finalize their recommendation. They are looking to make a formal presentation on their recommendation during operating budget Saturday. We expect that you'll have that report in hand in January to review, and then they'll be present to answer questions at that operating budget meeting on the first Saturday of February.
Yeah, I think where they will likely end up is a recommendation that, that sticker fees be set so that it covers a certain percentage of the operation of the transfer station. I think, lots of comments at that meeting were supportive of that idea, so I think that's where they'll end up.
Okay, any other questions? Justin, no?
Actually, Jeff, I do have a question. Excuse me, and it was brought up at our last meeting with the number of households that are taking on their own trash haulers. I find it kind of hard to imagine that our numbers, and I understand that the cost increases, but with the number of households that are hiring their own haulers, why aren't we seeing some kind of balance in that?
Because the sticker fee hasn't changed in a while.
Yeah, probably 5 years.
The costs are going this way, and
More like this way.
The tipping cost is the big one.
well, and the contract
Is up.
at the end of June, so starting July, we'll probably have a fairly large increase, so that any increased number of stickers sold aren't really keeping up with the increased cost. So, and I think that kind of may tend to fluctuate. We had, an increase in first sticker sold this year as opposed to last year. I think that might be correlated to, sort of the inflationary times that we're in, so people are sort of feeling stressed, and so instead of doing a private hauler, they do this, which is cheaper. Whereas if their budget wasn't as stressed, they would go to the convenience of
hauler.
a private pickup.
I also think our household is one of them where we have a private hauler, but we also purchase a sticker as well. Because sometimes, we just go. So I think there's also, I don't think we can make an assumption that the folks that are doing private hauling
Aren't getting
yeah.
a sticker.
And
in
for
addition.
many of them, they're doing it, and they're doing it for the recycling and/or some trash.
And the other point that was made, that really the cost of recycling is, at this point, is equal to the cost of disposing of
Disposing.
trash.
Right.
Right.
Used to make a little money, now it's costing money.
Correct.
I think, Debbie, if you have time, I would definitely, if you care to listen to the presentation that the committee did, it included all of that information. It talked about our tonnage trends. You know, it was a really informative presentation. I really want to compliment the entire committee's worked really hard the last year and a half on this, and like really got into the weeds in a productive way, and they synthesized a lot of the statistics and the different options really well at that presentation. So they will have like a report with appendices and everything for the board in January to review, really in the weeds and with a high level kind of executive summary. But I think that meeting is a really productive way of getting yourself like caught up. It's a good, they did a really nice job on Thursday, and really appreciative of the residents that came out on a kind of a cold, rainy night to participate. It was really a productive session.
Was there much input from residents, and I know there was a survey as well, of potentially having additional or different days?
That was discussed, you know, the fact that Sundays is the hardest day to staff and all. So they would look at still keeping it at 3 days, but doing 2 during the week with at least 1 open into the evening.
Yeah, Sundays are really the acute issue because it's hard to find people willing to work on Sundays, and it's also really expensive when our full-time DPW folks have to cover shifts because they're getting overtime, double time. Sundays are a very costly day. I know this week alone, our superintendent of public works reached out to me to let me know that we had a full-time person on double time all day on Sunday for the transfer station. We just couldn't get people to work, so it was well discussed at the presentation. And I think you'll get a very comprehensive recommendation from that group. They've really done their homework.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, we'll move on. So we have Chief Lacoste here from the Fire Department.
Public comment,
Oh,
even though.
any public comment? Seeing none,
Oh, he is a member of the public.
we have Chief Lacoste.
Good evening, everybody.
Hey, Chief.
Evening.
How are we doing? Good?
Yep.
Good. Thank you for having me here tonight. So just briefly, I wanted to go over some updates on the fire department. So for our current call volume, we are for 2023, we're a little above where we are with last year as far as run numbers. We continue to see a lot of back-to-back emergency calls, and you know that definitely puts a strain on our department when we have these 2, 3, 4 calls stacked up in a row. Mutual aid numbers, so we have seen some increases, actually overall pretty steady with mutual aid calls to North Andover, comparable to last year. Peabody's up a little bit. Danvers, we've had a significant decrease with mutual aid calls, and that's largely in part due to the change in ambulance service. So they have a new private ambulance that's taken over Danvers, which has helped us dramatically as far as, the need to go there mutual aid. So
Chief.
we've seen an improvement there.
The times that we provide mutual aid and the times that other communities provide mutual aid to us, do those kind of tend to balance?
Probably more so on our end, giving mutual aid versus people coming in, or services coming in. I know, like, in the case of Peabody, the private service that covers that community, we definitely go there more than they come here. It's just kind of how it rolls.
Do, if there's a call from the jail that you can't service because you're doing something else, that other towns ever come to cover mutual aid at a jail call?
Yeah, we've had Topsfield in numerous times. They've responded to the jail when we've been tied up. So, speaking of the jail, you know, for 2023, so far, we've seen a slight increase in the percentages of transports from that facility. For 2022, we're at about 15% of our transports were from the jail. Right now, we're at 17.8, so we've seen a small increase in those transports from that facility. Two concerns that I continue to have, and I know I brought up at the last budget summit, was you know, the availability of part-time members to fill shifts. That is a continual struggle, and also off-duty personnel, them coming in for emergency calls when they're off duty. I know, as stated previously, a lot of our part-time, or a lot of our members, period, live out of town, whereas 20 years ago, there were a lot that lived in town. So that's a concern moving forward. As far as staffing updates, I have two members that just recently completed paramedic training. So Ethan Tansen, who's our most recent full-timer, he just finished paramedic school, along with Nathaniel D'Amico, who is one of our part-timers. They're in the process of taking their state exam, and hopefully we'll have them on board relatively soon. Once Ethan finishes his training or his certification for his paramedic, he will then be attending the full-time fire academy in Stowe. I would say probably March, April, hopefully, depending on availability. I also have two part-time members that are currently in the part-time fire academy out in Rowley. That takes place a couple of nights a week and some weekends. They are probably a month or two into that training.
And how long is that training?
That training, the part-time training is, I believe, 4 months, but it's only like 2 nights a week and an occasional Saturday, so it's not as, you know, as in-depth as the full-time academy that Ethan will be attending shortly. Grant updates. So unfortunately, the department did not receive, or the town did not receive, the SAFER grant, which was definitely disappointing, but you know, there's only so much funds to go around, and you know, we'll hopefully take another crack at it next year if it becomes available. The assistance to firefighter grant. So we're slowly starting to see our items come in, like the air packs that we recently received. I actually just got a shipment of gear today, turnout gear, so we'll start to put that in service. So, you know, that's good news. There's also 2 other grants that we'll be putting in for shortly. They're due the end of December. The state equipment grant, which will be for up to $15,500, and the EMPG grant, which is, I think, just under $3,000. So we'll be applying for those 2 grants as well. As far as new equipment, so I received notification the other day that our fire engine, unfortunately, is not going to be delivered till probably the first quarter of 2025, which is extremely disappointing because I think we're looking at about 2.5 years since.
Do they hold the price?
What's that?
Do they hold the price?
They do hold the price. Yep. And that same truck today, I was told, is over $900,000. So, you know, it's concerning that it's unfortunate that it takes that long for the equipment to come in, but I guess it is what it is. The new ambulance, so we're just wrapping up, or we're currently working on speccing out the ambulance, getting that ready to be ordered, and I anticipate hopefully within the month we'll have that placed, and I'm being told that is also going to probably be a 2+ year wait for that vehicle, which is unfortunate.
How's your repair budget doing?
So, knock on wood, it's, so far we're better this year than we were last year. But, you know, I know we just had to send engine 2 out, our newest truck out for some repairs, and I just got a bill for that. I think yesterday it was about $3,000. So that's been my biggest expense so far. But I'm hopeful that, you know, it doesn't get much worse than that, but we'll see. As far as ongoing projects that we have going on with the department, we have First Due platform, which is an online program that's it's multifunctional. It allows the department to do scheduling, fire and EMS documentation. We can track assets and inventory. And more important, we can do pre-planning. So what happens is the crews go out and they pick a business, let's say, and they can go into the business, they do their routine inspections, and they also, they can mark where the sprinkler connection is, where the electrical panel is, where the water shutoff is, and so forth. And what happens is, in the program, they have a map, like a Google map, where they look at the picture of the building, and they can put icons on the building as to where everything is located. In turn, we also have a computer in the apparatus, so when we respond to, let's say, Market Basket, for instance, we have that image on our computer screen, and it also shows the icons that were placed by the staff. So when we go in, we know exactly where these important items are located so that we can, plan accordingly. What's also nice about it is if a mutual aid company comes in, like if Danvers comes in, they use the same program, so they have access to the information that we've put into the system. So, because a lot of times, especially with mutual aid, they're not familiar with, businesses in town, so they may not know where, certain things are. So that has definitely been a very helpful in, planning and, helping to, prepare for emergencies. Another feature that is proven to be pretty important is Community Connect. I don't know if you've heard of that. So it's through First Due. It's a free program for residents of Middleton, and I have some cards I'll hand out to you folks. You can pass it along and sign up for it. It's for Middleton residents. And what happens is you create an account and you will log any important information that you have for your home, like contact information, where your electrical panel is, the same information that we gather for commercial properties, you can put in, you can input for residential properties, and it gives us valuable information that we can use should we need to respond to your home. And like if you have, let's say, a couple of dogs that live in the house, you can indicate that in the plan. If you have your mother-in-law lives in the house and she's on oxygen, you can put that in the plan too. So if we go there for a fire or an emergency, we know that there may be somebody on the second floor who is, in a wheelchair or on oxygen. And I think where that comes in handy, or where it's useful, is when we had the threat of the recent hurricane. I know I was talking to Mr. Cloutier up at Meld, and one concern that we have is if we have somebody in town that is dependent upon electricity for oxygen, let's say, if they're on home O2, right now we don't have a way to really tell who is dependent for that reason. And by having people log into this account, create an account and put in this information, we can then run a report and say, okay, there's, 50 residents in town that rely on electricity for the purposes of oxygen. So, we can plan accordingly. And so that's, it's secure, it's free. I certainly encourage people to sign up for that. I know when we had the recent Pumpkin Festival, we had a table out in front of the fire station, and we were handing those cards out, kind of explaining, the purpose of it and, what function it serves and so forth. So I'm hopeful that we can get people out, get people signed up and, utilize the feature.
And once, you sign up, you gotta keep it current, so that, if somebody, when you set up your account, you had nobody using oxygen living at your house, but then 2 years down the
Yeah.
it does,
Correct, yeah, that's probably
keep
one of the
updating.
downfalls, is you gotta keep up with it, so, but definitely, I can't stress enough how important that information is, because, if we go to somebody's house for an emergency and we don't have contact information, or if we don't know where, the electrical panel is, or the gas shut off or whatever, where, we're walking around that house looking for it. This just saves time, and while we're responding to the incident, the officer can be looking at that computer screen and seeing that information that was put in either by us for a commercial location, or by you as a residential location. So definitely, definitely important and useful information on our end. As far as fire prevention, another thing that we're working on is, I know Lieutenant Kessel, he does a great job with fire prevention, but, one of the downfalls with him is that he's on shift, so he works his 224s while trying to, get out and do fire prevention activities. So firefighter Bill Warnock, I don't know if you know Billy Warnock, so he's a retired North Reading fire chief. He came over here and works part-time for us. Smart guy, a lot of knowledge. He has helped, he's taken over some of Dan's work and is doing some fire prevention work as well. So that's proven to be extremely valuable, and, just his knowledge and expertise and stuff has been very important. So he's going out with...
What type of things would that, like fire prevention, so give us some examples of like what would he do?
So he would go out, what he's working on right now, for instance, is if we have locations in town that have a license for, let's say, flammable storage, they're also required to have a permit. So they need to have a license and a permit, and we've fallen behind on that, so there's some places that have expired permits, so we're working to get that up to speed. He'll also go into, businesses and check fire extinguishers or check emergency lighting, or, just different things
Yep.
like that. So,
Yeah.
definitely, it's been extremely helpful. And we can also tie that into the First Due program, because it allows us to, log that information in for, business ABC. We can see when we were last in there for inspections and so forth. So definitely something that's is important. Another thing that we're working on is Medicare ground survey. So we're currently collecting data for Medicare, which involves cost, revenue, through the ground ambulance data collection system. So what we do is we collect for this fiscal year, and then after the fiscal year, we have to report our findings. And if we don't report, we're faced with a 10% penalty on Medicare reimbursement. So definitely important. We're working on that right now. So that's a big project. As Justin mentioned earlier, comprehensive emergency management plan. So I just received the plan that I submitted back from MEMA for review, and there's a few adjustments I have to make, but once that's done, I'll be sitting down with Justin and some of the other department heads to go over the comprehensive emergency plan. And then once that plan is in place and approved, we'll then be working on the continuity of operations plan. We'll be looking to update that as well. So, definitely two important plans for the town to have in place, and should we have any sort of disaster or emergency that we need to deal with. And I think that's it for the most part. Does anybody have any questions?
Nice job.
Okay. All right.
Thanks,
Thank you
Chief.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, we'll move along. We have a donation to accept to the food pantry from the Food Truck Festival from James DeRocha. I don't think he's here, but I'm sure we have
He's-
the donation.
Coming a little later. We
Okay,
don't have
that's
the
fine.
final information, but he said to expect him a little bit later.
Okay.
So if we can hold him till he gets here.
Of course, yep.
Thank you.
We have a review and endorsement of the master plan implementation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in your packet for this evening, dated November 3rd from the Master Plan Committee, they made reference to the 2018 Master Plan 300. For me personally, this is the third time I've been going front to back through the master plan process in a municipality, so it's not my first go-around for an implementation, but it's not uncommon for communities to go through the master planning process only to put the document on a shelf and for it to just sit there. As referenced in this cover letter, the committee is asking that the attached plan be reviewed by the select board and approved. So just to run you through it quickly, it breaks it down essentially in various tasks, the party responsible to implement those tasks, and then notes on whatever progress is ongoing. So, for example, for me and my team in town administration, you'll see a lot of TAs there, so they're going to keep us pretty busy. I don't know if the board had any questions on this, or of course, Mr. Cresta actually serves on this committee, so I don't know if there's anything you'd like to add to that process as your group has been going through that.
I don't have a lot to add, as the last two meetings I've actually been out of town during both of them.
You know, one of my comments relates, to the Community Preservation Committee. Consciously, when the town adopted, the CPA in 2004, 2004, was that the CPA would be used as an alternative funding source for our capital projects, which means that the CPC committee does not initiate any projects. Anyone that contacts us with interest, in getting funding, we say, okay, they go through the town's capital planning process, and, that's how it gets vetted, and if it, is for a CPA-approved purpose, it gets funded by the CPC. So assigning various tasks, that the CPC is, is the responsible committee, goes counter to how we operate. So, we don't follow anything, we don't initiate, anything. So, reference to that was made under the Affordable Housing Trust, the Conservation Agent, the CPC itself, the Department of Public Health, the Historical Commission, the Trails Committee, and on the Town Plan or Recreation. So I think, it makes more sense to remove those than to keep them in there.
Can I make one note, Costa?
Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed the asterisk symbol is not just about identifying responsible parties, but also funding sources. So it might be that we need to do a second symbol for funding sources versus responsible, because some of these are because you have money.
Yes.
As the funding
And that's what all the committee does. We're not an activist committee, we are just a funding committee, kind of like the FinCom, only for CPA money.
So maybe a whole separate column then?
Or just like a double asterisk for CPA
Yeah.
instead, or some other type of denotation.
So is this a plan to try and implement the 2018 master plan? Is that what this is?
That is correct. So going through, I think their concern, it's a valid concern, is going through this list, stating the priorities of the community, or at least what came out of that process as priorities of the community, but then not, I guess, checking in with the entities responsible to carry that out to see if they're actually following through on it.
I'm just wondering how relevant that particular master plan still is. A lot has changed in town, a lot has changed through COVID. There's just been so many changes in Middleton and in the world since 2018. I wonder if the plan is still relevant. I really question that. If you read through the whole master plan, I'm not sure that it is.
Yep. I've read through it a couple times myself, and I will say, kind of adjacent to that thought, folks are oftentimes surprised as they go through this list how much we actually are doing. And I think I think people might be surprised if we sit down and go through this, that a good chunk of it is being done. But I think, to your point, Mr. Chair, there may be value, and also now that you're 5 years or beyond into that process, maybe thinking about when the time would come to kick off another, and usually 10-year increments is usually appropriate, but it's not unusual to go sooner, or some communities go far after.
Well, one thing that may be appropriate is for the master plan committee to sort of have that discussion, this is what we found when we did the plan. This is how the world has, changed, and just have a discussion within the committee, and not necessarily, and if they conclude that, mostly, it's still on track, then that's fine. If they conclude that, so much has changed, we got to start all over, or whatever they conclude.
Right. So maybe just holding a session to review priorities.
I mean, and it's kind of
I
up
don't know so
to,
much priorities as relevance to each section of it. Is each, go through the section, is everything in that plan still relevant, I think?
So like maybe relevancy of tasks that they
Yeah.
list or something, okay.
Or appropriate, relevant or appropriate, I guess, for this for current state of the town. Something here surprised me. It said that the fire station parcel is owned by the library? So, okay,
Which is owned by the town.
right, I was surprised to see that.
It's an interesting way to word it, I suppose. I don't have the back history on it, though.
I never,
Chief, do you have anything on that?
does that mean the library trustees control the
No.
fire station property? I don't know what that means, that the fire
It's
station is
not
owned by the
the-
library.
It's not the full parcel, it's just where the property's divided. It's just the way the lot lines are. We own everything. But
Exactly.
it's just the way the lot lines are divided.
Yeah, I've just never seen that before. It kind of surprised me.
That may be
I-
miswritten.
I've only seen it because we looked at the deeds last year when we started the disposition process, so I'll get them to Justin so he can get them to you and
Okay.
you can take a look. It's not anything that has any consequences, it's just how the parcels are divided, it's just,
But it kind of says that we can't, the town can't do anything with the fire station property that's not approved by the library, the way this is, well, it says.
What page is
the-
it?
On page 5, it says the fire, so it says, investigate, uses for the fire station land if the golf course is bought. Then it says, the fire station parcel is not available for development as it is owned by the library.
I must have missed that one.
It's on page 5, the fourth from the bottom.
Oh.
Yeah, I think we need to
just
get
the
some
way it's
clarity on that.
written.
Right.
I'll send you what I have, because Brad looked into it last year for me pretty extensively and did a lot of deed research
Okay.
from the assessing office, so I'll get that to you in the morning.
as long as I've been involved in town government, that's all, I've always heard that, the fire station is on the library parcel.
No. Is it something going
I had
back to
never
when
heard
that
that before.
parcel of land was donated for the purpose of building that library? It could be something a way back type of deed restriction or?
I don't think it's a restriction, I think it's just the way the parcels ended up, I don't think it's,
So,
We'll look into it.
I
And
mean, just because, it's always been talked about that way, doesn't make it so.
Right.
I've never heard it until I read this.
Because, years ago, before how Manning, was built, rebuilt, where it was, the conventional wisdom was that you couldn't move, do anything with the parcel in back of the old building because it was parkland and restricted. Turned out not to be true. And the building kind of moved back, from, the new building is further into the parcel than the old building. So, just because you hear something all the time
Right.
doesn't make it so.
Right. Okay, so takeaways I have so far are checking into the history and dynamic of the library potentially owning the fire station or what that is intended to mean. Holding a session to review the relevancy of some aspects of the document and maybe talk about future master planning initiatives and what a timeline would look like for that. And then highlighting that the CPA isn't so much an actor here, but a funding source to get you guys off the hook. Sounds an awful lot like you're trying to shirk your duties there, Costa. Skip out on some work here.
Happy to provide funding when we have it, and we generally plan, so we've never not been able to fund a project that's meets the CPA criteria, so.
Right,
So
specific.
I'm assuming everything that's checked where it states that it is either completed or ongoing. Ongoing means it's been started, and there's some type of expectation that it'll be completed by a certain date. Are we to assume that the items that are white, that are not checked, either work has not occurred, or it has started, but it's in its infancy?
So I would say to the knowledge of the committee, it is not started. So there are some items that Jackie has called out where, they may be unaware that we have begun that work, and we just need to notify them of that. So I'd say what you're describing is the intent of what that is supposed to mean, but it's not necessarily the reality.
I owe Katrina my report, and that's some of the white spaces that should be greens already.
So one of the ones that stands out to me is upgrade public safety communication and efficiency.
That's on my list of ones to report positively on.
Okay.
So I would say this is, for tonight's purpose, informational, but incomplete.
So we can give that feedback back to the master plan committee, and then maybe have them, or maybe a selection of them even come forward to a meeting and maybe to, advocate for it in person or talk about a little bit more about what their intent is or what they would like to do. But let me check off these action items that we received tonight first, and we'll go from there, maybe sometime in the new year.
Okay,
Right.
thanks, yep, thank you. Okay, we'll move on. So we want to talk about to finalize the town administrator goal setting.
Yep, so this is just a follow-up, just to make sure that we hit the points you wanted to hit. So, the changes were on number 9 to implement employee satisfaction surveys as part of the renewal on focus of employee engagement, satisfaction, and appreciation. And then also an entire new category, 10, overall communication strategies. So Jackie had some notes, and I went back and watched it a couple times, and I think we captured what you all were looking at. You already voted to approve it at the last meeting, but I just wanted to bring this forward if anybody saw anything different.
Anybody have any comments?
I think, the additions and, the blue prints are, adequately represent what we had talked about at the meeting, so.
Okay.
Yeah, just one item I'd add on the blue, and specifically the communication strategies. At some point, just because you're newer here, kind of like your input on our website. I think it's time for a refresh. And there are some things in the website that are just so hard to find, that should be easy to find. And I think early on it was easy to find, but it's now gotten a little cluttered.
Yep.
So, in the past, when we've done refresh and updates to our website, we've actually used some PEG dollars for that. So I'd ask, as part of the overall communication strategy, at some point, to kind of have a little bit more of a non-cursory, but a little bit deeper review of the website and see if there's some things that should be put on our radar screen for future investments.
And I'll add that on, and I will note that Jackie has directed our grad fellow, Billy, what's Billy's last name?
Billy Walsh.
Billy Walsh,
Of Merrimack,
geez, it's like,
of Merrimack College. Fame.
But Billy's doing an excellent job just for the low-hanging fruit pieces of that, but we have had discussions about doing a little bit of a deeper dive over the next year or two, so we'll gladly add that.
Yeah,
It's-
Who
it's
is the
within our
administrator
contract.
of the website? Who has control, is it Eileen, is it you? Is it-
Hi.
It's you?
Nice to see you. Yes, it is I. And Deb. Deb does a great job too.
No, websites seem to me like master plans. They need to be re-examined and rebuilt periodically, because things change, technology changes, information, changes. If too much information accumulates and you can't easily find it, it's like it's not there.
Right. Things just
I
get
agree.
buried.
Yeah.
To your recollection, does anybody know when the last time it was overhauled?
Civic Plus, the last one was about 5 years ago, because we are in our free contract year of a free refresh this year. So Billy's gonna be taking a pretty deep dive. He'll be coming, I think, to a meeting in the early part of the year. He'll have a presentation for the board.
Great.
For feedback.
make sure you write his last name down.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's doing a whole project plan for me for his, because he's in his master's program. So I asked him to lay out his whole plan and timeline
Well,
before
he is a
we-
Merrimack student, so he has to be phenomenal.
He is great. He also was my favorite Halloween costume at Town Hall
That's good.
this year, so he's excellent.
He's doing an excellent job, and Jackie and I are actively trying to not scare him away from a profession. So we'll see.
Okay. We have some different gifts and donations to accept. We have $5,000 from the Institution for Savings for the food pantry. Is there a motion to accept? I don't think there's anybody here to present it.
So moved with thanks.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much to them. And we have, Justin, maybe you can explain this one a little, a 24-inch commercial refrigerator for the senior center from Essex Tech.
Sure, thank you. So, Select Person Cresta had reached out to me in late October of a screenshot on social media that they were trying to solicit a fridge that had died at the Council on Aging. And so we wanted to make sure that the message was clear that we very much support our seniors. It was something that our office was unaware of, so I gave Jillian a call, the director down at the Council on Aging, and we talked through the process. I went down there early in the next week to measure it and kind of take a look at it, and then we started trying to cast the net and looking around, and Heidi Riccio, the superintendent of Essex Tech, happened to have a meeting in my office on a separate issue when I had mentioned that a fridge had died and whether or not they had any kind of lying around, and they actually did. They have a whole division that works on repairing commercial fridges of that size. And so what we're looking to do is take the one that died at the Council on Aging and drop it off there and then return with a working one. So she is committed to that. So I just wanted to take a moment to publicly thank her for her partnership and to also just give you all an opportunity to vote to accept it.
I move we approve with thanks, and I also request that we send a note of thanks to the superintendent.
Yes, definitely, yeah.
I agree.
Is there a
Second?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Justin.
I'm sorry,
Procuring that.
were you,
Okay,
So
next
she
up-
doesn't just keep our website, she also takes our minutes.
only because our minute secretary couldn't be here tonight?
So we're gonna talk about how to accept donations for the municipal complex, setting up an account, what type of things would interest us. So I don't know if you have some information or ideas.
Sure. So, and Jackie had put this memo together actually, and at my request, she did bounce it off legal counsel because these type of things, sometimes there's a fine line on how you can or when you can solicit for this type of item. But I'll hand it over to Jackie because she's the one working to set it up.
Yeah, thank you. So, and I think we've talked about this since Justin's been here a little bit, but a little bit last year as well, and in discussions with the building committee when we talk about the budget for this project. But we do have a donation account already created. Sarah Wood, our finance director, has created an account for anyone that would like to donate towards the municipal complex. But what this memo asks is for you to create an ad hoc committee of 5 members to continue to solicit particularly institutional donations towards the project. So with the program, the way we kind of talk about the program, we have the 4 functions: town hall, council on aging, fire and police, and then the town common, the open space. Out of all those groups, only the Friends of the Council on Aging has like a fundraising arm. And so to hopefully drive institutional giving for the various meeting rooms, the open space, the other functions, we'd like to create this committee to assist us in soliciting those, similar to how the Friends of the Library solicited donations during the Flint Public Library process. It's a little different because, you know, it was many years ago. They were an already established Friends of organization, and so they could go out and do that. We don't have an arm to do that for the wider municipal complex. It also, we can't, as municipal employees, go and solicit these types of institutional givings. So we'd like to have this committee that we would support and assist to help us with the naming policy of what the threshold of giving would be if someone wanted to do, you know, an in memoriam for a loved one who was involved for some reason for a meeting room. But we'd like to have, you know, an appointed committee by this board to assist us in making those decisions.
I have a question. So apart from the committee part, as far as the accounts, there'd be separate accounts, like, let's say I wanted to make a donation to the police station. Is there a separate account that money be segregated from the Blue Haven donation that's for the senior center?
So it would be segregated, but it's just one donation account from an accounting perspective. So it would be segregated for the use if someone wanted to delineate the use for a specific thing, but it's just going into one bank account.
And that's the account where the Blue Haven money is?
No, this is a separate donation account for the municipal complex.
Well, that's what,
People can earmark like on the memo line of their check that they
Right.
want it for the certain thing, but it's not like we're gonna do an account for each individual.
but it would definitely be well-known by who's ever in charge of it. If I made a donation to the police station, that this money.
That you want, so then when I get an invoice,
Yeah.
so when we process the invoice, I will look for a public safety building related invoice that has something for the police department. We can do it within our accounting
Okay.
system, Jeff. We don't have to.
But, realistically, the reason anyone, whether individual or institution, donates is to get something named.
Correct.
And
Yeah,
Not
other-
always, not all, not.
Well, otherwise, you're just saving taxpayers' money. You're not making it feasible for that facility to be built because the money is already approved.
So I co-chaired the committee that raised the money when there was a shortfall in the building of the Flint Library. It was about 600 and some odd
Well,
thousand.
no,
That was-
that was part of the approval that the fundraising had to happen. It
Well,
wasn't just the shortfall.
yeah, but it ended up being a bigger shortfall than was expected. But I think we got to be very careful here. There's a slippery slope in naming buildings, rooms, conference rooms, and so forth. I think before a committee is created, I think this board needs to kind of give some parameters of what this, I'm going to call this, I want to be careful not calling it a fundraising, what the donation policy will be. We went through this with the library, and there were multiple naming opportunities, and it was different in the library because you could have study carols that were named in honor or in memory of somebody with a small little plaque. It was the Beverly Hospital Conference Room, which isn't always called the Beverly Hospital Conference Room today, and they made an $85,000 contribution to the library for that. We also had another family that had made over a $100,000 contribution that didn't want anything named. I think we have to be very careful. To your point, the project's fully funded. Town meeting and the taxpayers have fully funded this. I don't want this to become a kind of a gift committee of above and beyond. And I don't like naming things in town after folks or organizations that are still with us. I personally believe that's a slippery slope that you have to be careful about. So I think before this is created, I think this committee should come up with some parameters that we hand to this committee of kind of the rules of the road. What I don't want is, somebody comes in and says, well, I'd like to make a $5,000 contribution and I want the meeting room named after me. No.
Right.
No.
Right.
In the library, there were multiple opportunities for things to be named. But there was also, as you know, when you come in the back entrance, there's the small little brick patio there where individuals had bricks that were engraved. Now, we're going to have a town common down there with a bandstand that, there may be opportunities for bricks and other items like that folks can memorialize or recognize family members or town residents or items like that. But I think at a future meeting, we should put on an agenda for this. There will be some organizations that will want, and some institutional organizations, but to your point, Costa, they're going to want things named after them. And I remember dealing with the Beverly Hospital at the time. They were very clear that they were making this donation, but they wanted this known as the Beverly Hospital meeting rooms, which are always known as the Beverly Hospital meeting rooms today, $85,000 later.
The biggest bang was, naming the book return.
Yeah, and we had, that was, the book return was Angelica's.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
Corliss thing.
And every bank in town made a very generous donation. But part of the argument we were making during that was these dollars that were being raised were allowing a lot of the finishes to be done in the building that would have, if these dollars weren't raised, weren't going to happen. For example, the end of the bookcases were encased in wood instead of being metal. It made for a better visual inside the building, but they weren't, it's not like we're opening a library without bookcases. We're not opening a town hall without desks.
And if I may, I want to just be clear that the intention of this is not to add additional money to the project. It is to reduce the second borrowing that town meeting.
No,
approved
and
in
I
October.
appreciate
just wanna
that
be
as
clear
well,
for
but
the public as
I
well.
just want to be careful that
Yeah.
as a town or a committee made up of members of this committee and the building committee liaison and then 3 at large, that we are not an organization going out with a tin cup, shaking it before the businesses in Middleton that are also already funding this project through their taxes.
I think it's a pretty streamlined strategic effort, but just not one that we can do. We need.
No, and I get we can't do, but as much as I'd like to say that there may be some big businesses out there that are gonna make a big dent in the second borrowing, I personally don't think this is how we should be funding any of the costs of this.
You don't think that there's some
There
large
may be
businesses
some
in
folks.
town that would donate without expecting namings? I think there would be,
There would be some.
yeah.
There may be, but I will tell you, when we went through this process for the library,
Traditionally.
when we went through this process for the library, there were identified naming opportunities that had certain amounts tied to it.
I think that's where, Brian, there were, and so if the goal of it is that the select board would like to be the ones to choose those opportunities, we don't have to do a committee. We could just have it be the select board, but we don't. When the library was built, there was a Friends of organization that handled this, like, we have a patio space off of the COA that's being built in the sense that there are doors, but we don't have the patio being, like, that's something that's coming later. That's a great opportunity for brick naming. That alone, we need some kind of organization to help us oversee. From a staff perspective, we can't coordinate that.
So let me just say this out loud. So a local business comes in and says, I'd like to give $5,000. Thank you very much. I'd like the meeting space named after my family member or my business. Quite honestly, if we're going to name the meeting space after somebody, it should be a longtime resident that maybe has passed on that has made a substantial difference in this community.
Such as this room.
But
You
I
know-
don't think that we should assume that everyone that wants to give a donation wants something in return. I think there's gonna be businesses and people.
No, but if somebody comes in and says, because there will be some, well, this is what I'd like.
I mean, we got donations tonight, we just got, 5,000 from the bank, asking nothing in return.
You could, if you'd want to ease your concerns, consolidate that recognition onto a plaque so that the inside of town hall doesn't end up looking like a hockey arena.
Thank you.
That's sometimes a good way to work around that.
And the library did that as well, and there were certain donation levels that allowed, you were the patron level, the
Yeah,
sponsor
gold or
level, and so
whatever.
forth. But I don't want the town out there with a tin cup. I'm afraid this committee's gonna look like we're rattling a tin cup to reduce the tax burden when the logical folks we're going to are going to be businesses and individuals in town that
I
are
don't think
already
it's that,
spending.
Brian. I think it's more that we expect people to come forward, maybe some wanting something, maybe some not wanting something, and we need a mechanism to do it. I think that's what this is
Well, if
more
if
about.
folks are coming forward, I think we can address it when it comes forward. What we're asking for is the creating of a formal committee of 5 individuals, 2 of them one from this board, 1 from the building committee, and then 3 at large that are charged with basically soliciting donations. And Maybe it's me, maybe and I've been on the other side of this. I told you, we raised 650,000 in a matter of like a month. And there were a lot of people that wanted to donate because there was a lot of excitement around that, but the vast majority of them were naming opportunities, like the vast majority of them.
And I think that's where, Brian, like, so one of the people I had a significant conversation with was the current president of the Friends of the Flint, because I wanted to hear from their, her perspective of like, how did this go? Because we had talked about it extensively, and I wanted to hear from her as well. I think that's the intention, is that we don't have a 501c3 for this purpose of helping us with the naming, because at the end of the day, from a financial perspective, they were a 501c3. They did all of that work that you're talking about, that strategic naming work, bricks, all that, and then they could cut one check to the town to do the project. We don't have a group to do that. That's, we could have somebody that is a retired firefighter that wants to, feel strongly that wants to and I don't know that that's the case, but it's not necessarily to go out there and put out, to your point, the tin cup. It's really just so that there's a strategic group of residents that this board
It
has
says right
authorized.
here, the goal of this committee would be to solicit institutional and individual giving for the project to help reduce the burden of the taxpayers.
So it should have been maybe accept individual and institutional giving.
Well, that's completely
But
different. This isn't just creating a donation account and policy, this is creating a committee to solicit donations. That's how I read this.
Well, I think even with an institution like a bank, we still need to make the ask. Even the institution for savings tonight, there's certain ones that are annual that we get, but there's still somebody that's part of the food pantry or part of the front, like, that people ask. Which doesn't just occur. And so I think I think this was just to get the conversation started, for sure, of how we want to do this, because the goal is not to be inappropriate with it. The goal is to have a strategic group of people that are spending some thoughtful time on what are we naming, how are we naming it, and if there's a group
I'll say it one last time. I just think we're making a mistake if we're rattling a tin cup to allow, right, what here is a naming policy for various locations and features of the project. I mean, I think that's a mistake.
So, I mean, it could be the policy that you create is that naming rights is off the table. But I think, to Jackie's point, that we do need some type of mechanism. If we do anticipate that there are some businesses or individuals in the community that are going to donate, it would be helpful for us to have some type of guardrail, even if one of the guardrails is no naming. Naming is not allowed. That's one guardrail, we'll take it.
Parameter setting.
Yeah. So maybe if you all want to give it some thought, email Jackie about it, and then we can put that all together and bring it forward to the next meeting.
And where, the Blue Haven money, Jackie, where is that? Is that money in a separate account waiting? And what's any proposed use? What is the status of that money?
So that money we've talked about, actually, when we look at the building committee, when they've come in to report on the budget, one of the local funding sources is that Blue Haven money. And so we treat it the same way that we do any earmark for the project, where it has to be used for a specific item. So in that sense, like, we haven't spent the Blue Haven money yet. We had to spend some earmarks for the design of the public safety building. We've had other earmarks that we needed to use quickly. But so the goal of the Blue Haven money is that it'll be put towards the Council on Aging
So is that in a
construction.
separate bank account segregated account from the regular town funds? Where exactly is that money?
So
It's in a special account. Sarah told me there was a special account that she created. I know it caused a little bit of angst for her because a special account had to be created. It's not a revolving fund. It's not, it's,
I think it's a receipt reserve.
yeah,
off
it's a
the top
receipt
of my
reserve
head.
account. It's probably, I don't mean to use this term, it's probably commingled with our dollars but accounted for separately, because if I remember correctly, the language that the Board of Appeals had agreed to with the developer for Blue Haven was these dollars would be used for Council on Aging services, programs, activities, and others. So
I thought it was for,
now, and
amenities
we
like
made,
furniture and
yeah,
stuff
we
in
made a
the building,
decision
not-
that it would be utilized in this project, because part of the project is not just the bricks and mortar, but what's going to be
I
inside.
thought it was like furnishings and stuff
Yeah,
for the council. on Aging.
items like that, kitchen, et cetera.
And so that's where, when it comes to the spending of it, Jeff, not that it doesn't matter, it matters very much, we very much appreciate it, but that's when we start paying invoices for the various things that it gets used for. That's when, like, when we process the invoice, it'll get pulled from that account.
So that money would be separate from the donation account, that wouldn't go into this?
Accounting-wise, yes, treasury-wise, maybe.
Okay.
Well, if somebody made a if tomorrow the Institution for Savings decided they wanted to make a $5,000 contribution to our
New fire station.
new fire station, we would accept that donation just like we did this evening for their donation for the Middleton Food Pantry, just like we did for the Essex Tech donation of the commercial fridge.
But the difference, I think, is that money goes into the food pantry right now to be used, I assume, where this other money would have to be held.
I mean, there's almost $100,000 in the bank right now for the food pantry, because they're constantly taking money in and putting money out, but there's always like a status baseline. So it's not any different than our veterans donation, our COA, our food pantry donation accounts. It's a pretty standard account that we utilize.
So I think the biggest decision, not tonight, but at some point, are we going to allow any naming rights at a certain dollar threshold, or just not allow naming rights? That's,
And is this committee going to be the committee that'll be the policy and the donation acceptance committee, or is this a committee that's actually out there soliciting, as this says?
Legally, you would still have the final say on any acceptance of anything. This committee's just to help us have some guardrails and some capacity. But you guys always have to accept donations under our financial policies.
well, I think it would be better, Mr. Bryant's, we need to have the guardrails first.
Yeah.
To not have to refuse anything. So anything that came in would be appropriate to accept.
If you guys want, I can put together a parameter setting, and then we can use that as the tool to begin. I mean, we'll change, alter, whatever we need to, but I'll put that together.
Okay,
Should have it next meeting.
okay. So we'll put this on the agenda for the next meeting again.
Mr.
Okay.
Chair, this is Mr.
I see, yeah,
DeRosa.
I see
Okay.
Jim DeRosa's here.
Speaking of donations,
Yeah, speaking of donations, I guess you had a very successful food truck event. You can let us know how it
Coming
went.
with some
and-
money, so I'm not going to solve all those problems tonight, but thanks for having me. Thank you all for doing what you do. I appreciate it. So I'm here on behalf of the Middleton Food Truck Festival. This was our fourth year. We missed a couple because of COVID. But it was really a great event. It was really great just to get back in the habit of getting out there, after COVID and seeing people and getting together. A lot of people in the town really helped out. The Department of Public Works really helped us out this year. The fire department, the police department, the health inspector, Jackie helped us out a lot. So I want to really thank everyone for making it come together. I know I'm here like by myself, but it was really a lot of other people that made it happen. So that was great. We had a really great showing. We had I think 9 food trucks. We had 18 businesses come. All the food trucks actually donate money to come. All the businesses donate money to come. And we do a couple other fundraising things, so it's really like a lot of people coming together to make it work. And everyone from the town said it was awesome, so it's really cool to have be a part of an annual town event. So thanks everyone for letting us put it on.
Thanks
really.
for putting it on. Thank
Yeah.
you.
The next couple of years, hopefully, that site will be under construction. So you have to give some thought as to where you might want to hold it for those 2 or 3 years.
Right, yeah, yep. So we think there's a couple spots in town. An obvious backup might be just where they do Chief Will's Day. We really loved the idea of having it on 114. We actually had a lot of people that drove by while we were at the festival and just came in because I just wanted to come in and see what was going on here. So I was like, well, come on in. So, we'll do what we got to do to keep it going in some capacity.
Okay.
So this year, we are donating money to the food pantry, and we're also donating money to the Council of Aging. or excuse me, the Friends of the Council of Aging. So we have a check for $4,000 for the food pantry. And then we also have another check going out to the Friends of the Council of Aging for that. So every dollar that we get, that goes 100% to the Friends of Council of Aging or the food pantry.
That's great, that's awesome.
Yeah, and again, the town and the different departments helped us out a lot this year to be able to, give out some more money. So we have more ideas for next year. Our goal is we really want to be to get this up to at least $10,000 and find more ways to keep growing it. So every year we've been able to donate more money. This is only our fourth year, and the first year we only were able to donate $4,000. So, we doubled that amount, which is pretty exciting.
Wow, yeah. Okay, is there a motion to accept?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept with thanks the donation from the Middleton Food Truck Festival of $4,000 for the food pantry and $4,000 for the Friends of the Council on Aging.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Think?
Yep.
Yep. Thank
Were
you very
those a-
much.
Jim,
Thank you
were
so much.
those amounts correct?
So it's $4,000 for each. The Friends
Okay.
of the Council of Aging check is going directly
Yeah,
to
we
them.
don't-
Direct.
We don't
Okay.
accept.
We don't have to accept that. Well, we can still thank you for it.
Yep,
Right.
Yes, we
Yeah.
can.
All right, thank you.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great work. Okay,
Jim, are we okay to process this?
Yeah, yep.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
okay, on the PB Street Bridge project, some of the bids came in a little different, I understand, so we have to reallocate some funds.
Yep.
Do you want to?
Sure, thank you.
Exactly what's going on?
So I referenced this briefly at your October 24th meeting, but some of the numbers are still sliding around, so we wanted to nail them down. There's a little financial gymnastics here, so stick with me. Basically, we have an existing budget for the Peabody Street Bridge project. It totals at $475,000. It's $300,000 in state funding, $125,000 in ARPA funding, and $50,000 from our Chapter 90 account. The project went out to bid. Much like most projects right now, everything's coming a little high for materials and labor. We saw a spread at the high end from about $1.5 million to the low bid, who was a qualified bidder, at $566,317. We've since had pre-construction meetings, we've vetted them, and we're comfortable with them. So that low bid is $91,317 over budget, so we can't enter into a contract. Making matters a little bit worse, the $300,000 state contribution is tied up right now. We still need them to actually release it from the governor's office. So we've been checking in with them fairly regularly. We're being told that we should have it at, around the start of the new year, but we're not super confident about that. Even if it came in by then, it would be too late. The bid would expire. And our concern is if we wait and go back out to bid, it's just
It'll
gonna,
be higher.
it's just gonna be higher and higher and higher. And so, sitting down with Finance Director Wood, the conversation her and I were having was, well, what existing resources we presently have that we can shift to cover this and enter into this contract. And what we identified was 2 projects currently earmarked for ARPA funds. They're water looping projects, meaning for folks watching at home, it's 2 points in the water system that don't connect for whatever reason. There was a shortage when they were put in initially. I think one of them is as few as 300 feet. And it's a best practice to connect those to loop your water to keep it cycling for water quality.
Turbidity, yeah.
So Liberty Street and Essex Street to DeBush Ave were 2 projects. They each had a sizable amount of ARPA funding set aside, $650,000 each. And so those projects aren't even fully designed. They haven't gone out to bid. And so that money is just sort of sitting there. What we're recommending is taking a sum of money from each of those to cover the state portion. And when the state reimburse us, we can shift that money back when and if they reimburse us on time.
So when the state money comes, does that money, it can't go into the opera fund, does it go into our free cash and then have to be reallocated at a town meeting?
Yes, so it would have to rotate its way back around. Part of it's dependent on timing. If the state does come in at the start of the new year, then we can just reclass the money. We'd be fine.
Back to the
How
original
certain are
source.
we of the state money coming?
I'd say 100%, except for the fact that I don't have control over what they
So,
do. But
if
we're
we're-
pretty confident.
If we're
Yeah.
100% that it's coming, why wouldn't we reallocate some of the facilities project ARPA funds? Because by the money would certainly be back in time for that.
Yeah, I guess,
We haven't,
what's your thought on that?
we haven't entered into the contracts on the water
Oh.
infrastructure, and we have entered into the contracts on the building committee.
A valid
Right.
point. So, yeah, so basically we have an active
That's why we didn't
contract
pick
for the
it.
building project, but we don't for the water.
When
That's
do
a
we
fair
expect,
question.
when do we expect the water looping project to begin?
We don't have a firm timeline on it. It's not even out to design.
It hasn't even been out to bid
Yeah,
and design yet.
I would think,
But-
my hope would be next construction
But
season.
if we were to,
But it's not done yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
but if we wanted to get the water project done, well, we have two parts of this, so 391, but 300 might come back. What about the 91? Is the water project gonna be short 91,000?
Yes. So the 650 number, we're not even super confident that's actually what it would cost. That was just an estimate in and of itself. So it could come back under, which would be great. It could come back over. The question, though, if there's a gap, is you have retained earnings for water, but you don't have retained earnings for bridges. So if you really had to lean on it, you could draw off of that. There are other funding sources.
So to get the water project done, though, to get back to the ARPA funds for the project, do we really need that 300,000 right now? Because we have an open-ended, we have an up to $10 million.
But if we don't take the 300,000 for the Peabody Street
No,
Bridge project.
I wanted, I'm just
No,
saying.
but I'm
take-
saying, but if we don't do this now, we're gonna lose our bid window in the $566,000.
No, nobody's saying not to do this. The question is, do we take 300, so 300 of it, because we know we're getting it back from the facilities project ARPA funds, rather than the water project?
I
so
actually
we can get
think,
the water
I think
project
taking
done?
it from the water project makes sense for a whole slew of reasons. First off, if we want the water project to happen this construction season, we got to be out to bid pretty quickly. And I get the impression we're not really there yet.
No.
So,
This winter. It'll go this winter, but we don't want to wait until later in the winter. You want to try to hit it early because the numbers drive up if you're late in the season.
yeah, so,
I'm just thinking if the money doesn't come in time, we're certainly gonna need the time.
well, I think we will have time that if the dollars come from the state in a period that is later than we're hoping, and we have to do a reallocation through free cash, we will be able to do that during our May town
In
meeting.
May, yep.
And that will
If
still
necessary.
allow us to bid, award, and construct the water project. Secondly, if that timing doesn't work, and it's hung up in free cash and it's past May, we always have a ban opportunity for the water project, where we can just take a ban anticipation note, which would be extremely short-term until,
But I don't
Those
understand the
dollars get
down,
real.
maybe you could explain, what is the downside of taking 300,000 of the ARPA money we allocated toward the facilities project
because
temporarily?
it's already been allocated. It's been allocated and it's part of the contract now for the facilities project.
But we have the override, which is open-ended, so we have enough money to bid the project and do the project. It's not like 300,000 is gonna make or break it. This way, we have no worry about this water project that people need. If we're pretty sure we're getting this money from the state, we'll certainly have it. It'll be less of a, looking at a calendar thing to get this money for the facility than it will for this, if we get an opportunity in early spring to do this water.
This water project won't be done in early
Or
spring.
whenever. It
We'll be
just-
lucky if it gets done by the end of the next construction season.
Even still, there's more chance of looking at a calendar and worrying to get the water project done than the last $300,000 for the facilities project. That's, I don't understand why we wouldn't do that.
We-
So,
Go
sorry,
ahead.
Debbie, go ahead.
I was just gonna add to it, Jeff, we can't interfere with the contract that we already have for the facilities. That is like signed, sealed, and delivered. So the water loop for DeBusch and Liberty, we haven't even gone out.
But we don't have a-
bid. I know.
we
let
haven't
me
gone out to
fin-
bid for the-
I'm gonna
Yeah.
try to finish.
Yeah.
So we haven't even gone out to bid. We don't know what what that cost is gonna be. But we've allocated money for what we anticipated it would be, okay? Taking that money and securing this 566,317 bid is the most important thing to do right now. If we miss that, you're looking at 4 other bids that range from 1.5 to 903. We need to secure the 566. That money,
Nobody's disagreeing with, all of us are in agreement that this bridge
but we
needs to be
can't
done.
touch facilities.
I don't understand why we can't
We
touch
can't.
facilities,
It's
we have
security.
Here's the bigger issue.
The override is open-ended.
I think the looping project's not gonna happen next year. I think for timing, it's likely not gonna happen next year. Unless we're willing to go out for bid, like in the next month or so, this isn't gonna be a project that's gonna happen in the next construction season. We're probably looking at the next season, which, okay. And secondly, this is also gonna have to be done in conjunction with plans for, because I assume this is coming down Liberty, down School, down Essex, and over to
The bush.
the Bush. So it has to be done in conjunction with a paving schedule as well. And I don't even know what our paving budget schedule looks like. Because if I'm correct, the looping project didn't include curb to curb or edge to edge repaving of the roads. So, or at least wasn't planned when we were talking about this. So, taking the 300,000 for the water project does nothing to affect the water project. We're gonna do it, whether it's, if the project was ready to be awarded, then I would agree with you, Jeff. Let's pull it from the facilities project temporarily, because this isn't even, I mean, the specs aren't even put together yet, never mind gone out to bid, never mind soliciting bid, never mind reviewing bids, and then awarding bids. It's not gonna happen next year. It's not. It's gonna happen the year after.
Doesn't it come down to which project contract will be awarded first? Because.
Which is PBD Street.
No, I'm talking about the water or the municipal complex.
Municipal complex.
Right?
Yes.
Because whichever is going to go second out to bid and awarded a contract, that's where we have to take the money, because we have to keep the money in the other one to be able to award that contract, even though the actual money doesn't get paid until much later when it's, wrapping up. So from what we've heard of the municipal complex, they'll be going out to bid, beginning of January. A contract being awarded, in, March maybe. So that's going to that contract is going to get awarded first before the water projects even go out to bid, since we don't have the specs yet. Therefore, we can't take it from the water,
Municipal.
from the facility, to preserve our ability to award that contract in March. So we have to take it from water and then replenish the water when the state money comes in.
And when do ARPA funds have to be spent by?
So we're trying to draw them down this year. It has to be by the end of.
Well, not
the
committed,
next-
but spent, when do they have to be
I
actually
thought it was the
expended?
end of 25 or
Five.
24.
So,
it was
so
20.
not the end of this year, the next, but we're trying to wrap it up this year,
Yeah.
because every year that you have it, you have to report on it, and we
Oh,
don't
and you
want
have
to
to do a
need
single
to
audit as
report.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when do you absolutely have to spend, is there a time
December
when you
of
have to?
25.
It's the end of next fiscal.
So end of fiscal '25, they have to be expended.
Actually, fiscal 26.
Committed, not expended.
about
Committed
expended?
24, expended
Yeah.
26.
Yeah, thank you. So meaning that for people watching at home, that you have the money slated for something and committed to a project, but it hasn't necessarily left your account. I always look at that camera as if people are watching from that one.
But is there a
Lights on.
date that it has to be expended? Not committed, but
December
expended?
26.
Yeah.
December 26, you have to spend it. Right.
But we also have the expense, to Justin's point, of every year that you don't
Right.
deal with it, you've got to do another single audit.
Single audit.
Yeah.
And I don't think anything's going to get cheaper if we wait
And
until
and
26.
prior to ARPA, we never had a single audit.
We didn't need to.
Yeah, we never had a need for it.
So, I think taking it, from water is the wisest thing to do at this point.
I agree.
Okay. Is there a motion?
So run us through, so how do we get to the 566?
So I broke it down at the bottom of the memo, so, you would be, well, I'll read it verbatim here. So you're gonna be reducing the Liberty Street water looping project by $195,000, reducing the Essex Street to DeBush Ave water looping project by $195,000, and increasing the Peabody Street bridge funding from $125,000 to $515,000, with the understanding that should the state funding arrive in time, that $300,000 will be recommitted to water looping.
But the
So people,
515 doesn't cover the 566, 317.
there we go. So I was gonna say, for those of you doing quick math at home, the remainder we can pick up, just for the sake of easy numbers, but we can pick it up in chapter 90.
Got it.
Negligible amount.
Okay.
So are we ready, once we do this, are we ready to award the contract for the bridge immediately?
And
Yep.
when would that
I'm-
work actually start?
The work will, so pretty much as soon as you vote it, I have a text loaded up to send to Paul, so we can let the contractor know, and the contractor's gonna get going tomorrow to start mobilizing. They'll be doing some site stabilization, given that it's so late in the season. And then a big part of it is they'll have the green light to start ordering materials, because there is a lead time on that, and they'll be ready.
There's not going to be shoveling the ground till the spring.
No, not in a large sense. They might be doing a little here and there, but they won't be closing any lanes or
Yeah, yeah.
anything. And they'll be able to really hit the ground running come the spring.
And because the state's funding some of this, do they do any oversight, or they just give you the money and,
Also, where it's a bridge as well, there'll be some oversight. So
From the state?
yeah, they have to sign off on some items throughout the process.
I would think that the delay on the state side is this is probably being funded through a bond bill, and it's
Correct.
just, it's getting DOT to move the paper.
okay, is there a motion?
So moved, as described by the town
second.
administrator.
I'll second.
Okay, you should read, you don't want to read the,
I can read it if you want.
I think we
Oh,
should read it in.
Well,
Sure, reduce the Liberty Street water looping project by $195,000, reduce the Essex Street to DeBush Ave water looping project by $195,000, and increase the Peabody Street bridge funding from $125,000 to $515,000, with remaining required dollars to come from Chapter 90 funds.
And you don't want to put the part about the understanding,
Well, and once the $300,000 is released by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, that'll be recommitted to the water looping project in equal parts.
okay, did you
I'll
still,
second it again.
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have the approval letter to vote and support the Department of Revenue determination regarding a $9.95 million borrowing for the municipal building project.
Thank you. So, Jackie had referenced in a previous meeting the DE2 form a couple months ago, maybe. Basically, what it is a request from us for the Department of Revenue to reaffirm that the increase in project cost was due to inflation and not due to us adjusting the scope. And the importance of that is that what that means is the recent special town meeting vote that was held locks in that money without the need for an additional ballot vote, as you saw the first time around, because the project is still within that original buffer. So we did receive official news from the DOR on November 1st that they accepted the application that we had submitted. And they did reference on the second page a next step piece, which led to it appearing on the agenda tonight, not only as an update to the community, but a request that the board vote in some capacity that they are, or accept the DOR's interpretation that a ballot vote is not required, just so that we get that on the record should it ever come up in the future.
Okay, does someone want to make a motion for that?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve and submit the approval letter update to DOR regarding the $9.95 million borrowing for the municipal building project.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, Justin. Okay, we have the holiday schedule. I think that's for town employees, right?
That is correct for calendar year '24. Thank you to Jackie for putting this together.
And these are driven by contractual language as well, right?
Correct. So the one change
The
that
newest is Juneteenth.
Juneteenth, and then most recently, for the administrative assistant union, the Friday following Thanksgiving was added, but it excludes non-union employees.
How would we feel about making that a holiday for everybody? I would be fine with that.
It's not uncommon. Most town halls are closed the Friday after Thanksgiving.
So here's what I'd say. I'm comfortable leaving that to the town administrator of whether it's floating on the Friday after Thanksgiving or sometimes when Christmas Eve falls on a Friday or a Monday of allowing folks to be released early or anything. I don't think we need to memorialize it in the holiday schedule. I'm okay. This board basically giving the authority to the town administrator to
Agree.
release accordingly. I mean, a Friday after Thanksgiving is, town hall closes at,
It's traditionally closed anyway, from what I understand, for the past
I
6
just
or
wouldn't
7
want
PTO.
certain people to get it and certain people not to get it. I would hope it would be a all or none. I wouldn't want this department gets it, this department doesn't.
well, the only thing that is right now is because it's in their contract. I mean, it was negotiated.
Right.
Yep, that's new. So if the board supports that, we would continue to keep town hall closed. We just wouldn't dock non-union employees for not being there for the Friday.
Right, I think that's,
Can I
The
throw
consensus,
a
right?
wrench in, though?
Yeah,
we're okay with that?
Jackie says she might have a wrench, so
The wrench
toss away.
is, you may want, it is a choice to vote it specifically, to your point, Jeff, about equity, because two, right now, it was negotiated that the admin assistance union has it as a holiday. No other union does. So whatever you do, you could do it to Brian's point, that gives the town administrator the ability to do that, but the group that disenfranchises are the public safety and the public works unions, because then they don't get to treat it as a holiday under their contract, because there's different provisions for staffing, for floating, for pay, when those unions have something that's a holiday or not. So I would recognize that I don't have all the costing out of what that looks like, but if you only have it where Justin has that authority, you're really only talking about our office employees. It doesn't create the same benefit for our
So what do you
non-continuous
recommend?
operations.
If our intent is, you know what our intent is, so what do you recommend?
If your intent is to do it equitably across all employees, it should be a holiday on the calendar, but recognizing that if you don't want to make that decision without more information,
So if I could interject, I would say the biggest difference at Memorial Hall is that the building's already closed, and it's the only instance where it's a specialized dynamic, because it's the only instance where the building is closed, but there's non-union personnel. I'd say for any
and
folks,
195.
any folks that are covered separately, so like if we're getting into police or fire, if it's not in their contracts, if they're covered in a union, then I would say that's something that we can bargain down the road or incorporate into their contract language down the road to give them a makeup day. Like that's what I'm worried about veering into. For 195, I would extend the same. I think it would be appropriate to extend the same as to mirror Memorial.
The library and council on aging as well.
But they hold different hours. That's what I'm concerned about.
So, yeah.
They have,
Well, we can dig into it, but if we find that it's equitable, and if you find it's appropriate for me to follow through on that, or you trust us to land on something that's appropriate.
Is the library open that day traditionally or closed, do we know?
I think it's usually open.
I think it is 2. Let me look. Give me
Well,
a second.
for
Swear by
2023,
it,
it's
but I
coming
think
up in
so.
about a week. I mean, we're talking about 2024 here, so I recommend we adopt as proposed here. To Justin's point about bargainable, that should be discussed on it, and secondarily for 2024, I again would leave it in his hands to make a determination of how to make this equitable, and it should be, in the future, something that we should include as part of, at least for the union employees that are outside of the buildings we talked about, make that a negotiable item.
I agree.
Okay.
So we'll go ahead, and thank you for the support from the board, it's appreciated, and for bringing it up, Jeff. So, we'll go ahead and implement, something upcoming for next week, and then bring, I think, a larger, more comprehensive plan forward into the future year, when we have a little more of a, runway.
I just want to be clear that the library is closed that Friday.
Okay.
So it's closed anyway.
It is, yep, just so we're all on the same
As
page.
a holiday, or?
It just says closed on their schedule right now. So I'm not sure. I have to dig in
I don't know
further.
if that past practice, they've always been closed on that day.
So is that a paid holiday for library employees, or how does,
They do shift work, so they're a little different.
doesn't matter?
And that's where it gets hard, getting into the conversation of, equitable. It's not always as cut and dry as it seems, so we'll get into that a little bit, I want to say behind the scenes, but behind the scenes, on the town hall side, yeah.
Okay, looks good. Any updates or announcements?
Masco released its enrollment
Yeah, I saw that.
numbers, and continuing to go down, although there are 1,558 tri-town students there, but there's also 32 other students there, whether they're school choice or faculties, students. So there are actually 1,592 students being educated at Masco.
So is Middleton's percentage of that school population going up or down? Down, as a percentage, ours is down?
Yes.
What is, if you just look at the trend over 10 years, it's pretty dramatic.
Yeah.
And it's only going to continue to go down.
Well, not that much. The elementary, the K through 6 elementary numbers, they're 1,688. So if all of those 6th grades shifted to Masco,
Right.
on the surface it would be more, but each 8th grade moving to 9th loses about 35 to 45 students. So over the next 6 years, at best you could say that, the enrollment will be fairly flat.
So when you say the percentage of Middleton is going down, so who's going up?
Topsfield is going up the most. They've had a surge of enrollment.
Interesting.
Boxford, a little, and we're going down. And this year, they lost 45 students from 8th to 9th. Some bunch went to St. John's.
Be interested
bunch
to
to
see.
Essex Tech.
We'd be interested to see how many are being lost from 6th to 7th.
There are, not as many, and that started happening when St.
St. John's
John's
started a
went-
middle school.
Yeah.
Interesting statistics.
St. John's.
Those guys, yeah, can't stand them. Just a note, Mr. Chair, on the bottom of the agenda, I don't know, we keep missing the mark on this, but December 12th, it's actually December 5th, if needed, was the way it was written in the schedule, and then December 19th.
So it's December 5th?
Yes.
Okay.
Is the next meeting, you're saying it's December 5th?
No,
If it's determined it's needed.
If needed.
Yeah,
November 28th, then.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And as I understand, that's when we'll have the classification.
correct.
Is
For
which one?
taxes. No, on the 28th,
November 28th is the classification?
yes.
So it's not December 12th, it's December 5th.
If needed, correct. No 12th.
But 19th for sure.
Yes, 5th and 19th, 5th if needed. Got it, okay. I'm a
Just
little
for you.
slow on the updates.
Yeah, sorry for the
Wait, I'm
confusion.
confused on that. So we're meeting the 28th,
Yes,
definitely, and that's the classification?
correct.
And then the December meetings are what?
So the one on the 5th is held if we need it, but as of right now, there isn't anything on there. And then the 19th is definite,
So not the 12th?
correct. No 12th. That's
I
sorry about
had the right dates.
Yeah, I had them in my calendar, that's why I did.
Yeah, and the way we distributed them when we made the schedule is right, but we keep getting it wrong on
Oh.
the bottom here. So just if anybody comes across it at home and sees it, we will not be meeting on the 12th.
Okay.
No matter what, we're not meeting on the 12th.
So for those watching this meeting, so the classification,
Is the 28th of November.
and that's when we determine the
Tax rate.
split of tax rate for commercial versus residential. And the public is, it's a public
Public
hearing, and anyone from the public that wants to speak on it is welcome to come and speak on it.
And we're not required to put that in the newspaper anymore, but we still did.
Good, good.
Yeah.
In the newspaper
We
that nobody
did
in
too.
Middleton gets. That newspaper?
It goes online too,
That you have to pay a firewall to get.
not for those.
Okay, it looks like we're gonna go into executive session. Does someone want to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we enter executive session under General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with all units, and we will not be returning to open session.
I'll second.
Okay, I'll do a roll call. Clerk is not here. Deb, how do you vote?
Yes.
Melissa? Brian?
Yes.
I vote yes. Okay, we're adjourned to executive session.
Not to return.
Not to return.